I'm they call it the Industry Solutions Exec for Microsoft. So I'm the aggregator specialist for education. So I look after Education Scotland, Education Wales, London Grid for Learning, and also all the local authorities who looks after schools. So can I just have a quick, if you're a local authority, I'm sure this is a local authority event, just wave your hands, and you look after schools. Okay, so I'm in the right place. Okay, so if you do need to contact me, my details are on the board. Please write my details down. There's lots I've got to tell you, but I've got a short time, so I'm going to skip over a lot of things so I can hand over to James. But if you do want to speak to me about anything to do with schools, please feel free. We'll contact you and we'll come and see you if possible. I was talking to a local authority this week, and they were telling me about some of the challenges that they had. They look after around 300 schools in their region. And they talked about some of the issues that they had with the primary schools around funding. They talked about the secondary school around accessibility. And they were looking at this migration to the cloud, and they were wondering how are they going to take from where they are currently to the cloud. And they started telling me all these things that they wanted to achieve around migrating to the cloud. And at the end of it, the conversation, I had three things that was written on my pad. And the three things were, one was around cost savings. They wanted the whatever they decided to do to be at a cost saving to the school. So they didn't want it cheaper, they just wanted it to be reducing cost out of what they were currently spending. Then they talked about time. Teachers don't have a lot of time anymore. People within schools don't have a lot of time. So how can they reduce some of that complexity so that the people in the organization or people in the schools can do what it is that they're meant to be doing, so time. And the third thing was, well, actually, if we're going to be moving to the cloud, is it secure? What can we do around policy? What are we doing around security? And I started to talk around what our strategy is from a Microsoft perspective. Overall corporate strategies to empower every individual, every company and organization to achieve more. But actually we want to empower the students. So what we do is based on trying to allow these students to get the best out of it. So if we're going to do that, why do we want to move you to the cloud? What is cloud actually going to be doing for your organization? So everything we do from a Microsoft perspective is that those three things. One is around affordable, easy to manage. Now, James is going to talk about how simple it is to manage the Bromcom MIS. Transforming classroom time. So some of the things that we're doing in terms of allowing students to be able to access data, teachers to be able to access data, and very, very quickly, and better learning outcomes. And we look at these from three perspectives, or four if you take the student into consideration. We look at it from a teacher's perspective. What is a teacher currently doing that they can actually stop doing? Or what is a teacher currently doing where we can make it easier for them to access data? It's parents' evening. How are they going to get data from all these various points at a quick time? How are the parents going to understand and track some of the things that the students are wanting to do, they're wanting to do? And finally, around the principal, around the school, how can they get access to real-life data around attendance, around what's happening with some of their students, and put interventions in place when little Johnny, who's taking a lot of time off, or little Sarah, who has been coming in late every day. And there's something that some of our multi-academy trusts are doing where they're taking that data, using Power BI, incorporate it into safeguarding, and actually realizing that there's a problem. So I'm here to talk about Azure. I've probably only got another 5 minutes. And we know that education, we know that you guys have a lot of work to do. You have schools that need your help. So if you're going to move them to the cloud, why are you doing it? And I believe the main reason why you do anything is so that you can have a student-centered learning, transforming the classroom time, teaching and training, like CPD. It's around student data and it's around administration. So it's around keeping that school running. So you want to try to do things within the school that will allow your school to keep running, but reduce costs, reduce time, make life easier for you, give you more time to be in front of students. And so our CEO, Satya Nadella, he said, in order for you to trust the cloud, in order for you to trust Bromcom, in order for you to trust what we're doing, businesses and users has to embrace only if we can trust it. Now, how do you trust it? How do you know when you give your data to Bromcom or you give your data to Microsoft, how do you know it's safe? And we've got 4 pillars that we really focus on, and the main pillar is around security. We want to make sure that all your data is safe. We're doing so much behind the scenes to make your data safe, and whether it's encryption, whether it's 24/7 monitoring, whether it's all those things what we're doing behind the scenes to make sure that your data is safe. And so when we look at the cloud, now for those who don't know what a cloud is, typically most people will run a system in their own data center, in their own school. You will manage this, you will manage this, you will manage this. And whether it's your network department or whether it's a provider that you bring into your organization to run it, the schools will be running this. In some cases, they're running it on legacy kit. In some, they're running it, but they're not even sure how they're running it. In some, it's not really working how they would like it to work in maybe a primary school where there isn't that resource to be able to help. So what we're asking you today is to move it from your own data center where you're having to pay for updates, keep it updated, pay for management costs, pay for all those additional things, and actually bring it more into a software as a service where we manage it with Bromcom's services. So actually you're bringing it all over to another company who's got the resource, got the management, all those things in place to be able to manage it. Just in terms of the background of our data center, we have data centers all over. It's a big picture. I don't need to go too much into this. What we're trying to say is your data is safe. We have over 50 regions. Whatever you do with the data, you'll be best assured it's safe. Compliances, so maybe there's certain compliance regulations that you need to adhere to. We've got them all ticked. Now, if there's anything specific that you want to know, please feel free to contact in terms of compliance. And I'll say finally, because I'm conscious of time, what we're looking for is hero schools. We're looking for hero local authorities. If you're running an event in your area, say Norwich, and you have 100 schools, let us host it for you. Let us come and spread the message for you. We do something called Education Live, whereby we will come into your area and do a lot of the work so that you don't have to do it by yourself. If you're looking to run a MIS workshop within your area, get us involved. We will come and we will bring the resource. All your teachers by now should be logging into the MEC community, where they get access to free training, they get access to being part of a community. We want to get you guys involved where possible, and where we are running Education Live, so these are events which is local to yourself. So what I can do, I can send you these slides afterwards rather than, and Training Academy. If you've got some hero schools, so if you've got a school that is going on that transformation journey where you want someone to come and talk about the cloud, now they've done this, now they're at the end of and they are a hero school, why not get them to be part of our community? And between ourselves and Bromcom, we will start to get you guys involved. So one of the events that we're running next year just happens to be in Australia, where we will fly out some of these hero schools to Australia, where they'll get the opportunity to be presented on the stage and being part of their community. So we're here just to say what Bromcom is doing in terms of their cloud is fantastic. And James, I know you talk longer than me, so I'll let you come up and do what you need to do.
That's fine. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Australia, that sounds like a good gig, doesn't it? So let's keep Paul in the loop. I'm going to share our journey. I'm going to share where Bromcom is and share what we want to do going forward. And we're very much on a journey talking to local authorities and helping you to help your schools. And that's our focus. At the end of the day, we are excited by schools. We had a customer this morning saying that, you know, we work weekends and evenings. We genuinely care about our customers. I had a phone call last night in the car, 6:45. It was a problem that somebody had done something silly in the school. We went in and sorted their MIS, and the panic was it was Ofsted today, but that got fixed late in the evening by the team in Bromcom talking to each other and just going, I think somebody's clicked the wrong button in the background. So this is about our strategy. This is about having a dialogue, and what I've been doing over the last few months is out there talking to people in local authorities, support teams and schools about the journey that Bromcom is on in the cloud, supported by the Azure platform, as Paul said. What we're trying to talk about is quality, our legacy and our history in the marketplace. We've been doing cloud for 10 years. The way we architect it and build our cloud is proper software as a service. And if anybody technical wants to talk through that, we can talk through that a bit more. We've been on G Cloud since the beginning. We think that's a very efficient way to procure. It's actually quite quick, can save a lot of money, and can help you focus a procurement exercise. Paul's talked about these, efficiency and cost reduction, and about saving money. And I'm going to talk about saving money in two ways. My background is in education. I started teaching in 1984, so kind of been at it 35 years now. Taught for 15 years and then been in and around schools and maths and IT for all that time. And I'm going to talk about what I call in-year savings. How can we save schools money on their revenue budget this year, but also what I call structural savings over 3 to 5 years, which is the more classic technical TCO story. When we look at an MIS, one of the things that we discovered was historically sometimes where all the costs go to support an MIS completely sometimes get lost in the annals of time. So what we did is we said, what elements make up your MIS? And we put these pillars together, all the way from the hosting where it sits, through the software, through the third line support first, and the onboarding and training. And we said, well, these are the elements, and classically, let's turn that into a TCO model. So this is the total cost and all the pieces that a school needs to support an MIS. And I just want to unstitch that as we go forward and think through some of the challenges that we're seeing. And of course, this is where the Azure story comes in. You saw Paul's map of data centres. Our data is in England. It's here. It's not in the EU anywhere. So we make sure that our data sits in the UK, in England itself. So just if anybody has questions about that, we can talk through that. But it's underpinned by Azure, and we think that's vital as we grow. When we look at what we think schools can save, we think they can save around about £12,000 a year. And that sounds quite a lot, especially if you look after 200-300 schools. And I'm going to go through that and build that story with you so that this isn't just something I'm saying to you. This is working with schools, looking at their costs, breaking things down and trying to understand where those costs go. Some of them are listed here, and I'm going to go through them in a little bit more detail. Going back to my elements, a typical MIS model looks something like this. And I was interested where these are funded from. Because what we found is that certain costs for certain pieces of the total model come from different places. Quite often in a SIMS model, this piece of core software goes back to something that happened many years ago, and in some places it sits as part of a de-delegated budget that schools agree through the schools forum to allow the local authority to continue to purchase on their behalf. Sometimes that is delegated to schools, but they buy into this core piece here. But as Martin alluded to, in the 21st century, people are adding lots of bits to their MIS to make it functional and to make it fit for purpose. And those pieces are coming from, the pure delegated school budget. If people buy bolt-ons, and we'll come and talk about that in a minute, the communications package, that's coming out of the school delegated budget. Training, support, and this, I've got to have service somewhere, I've got to have machines that I've got to look after in schools. And they're supported by a number of different places as well. So it begins to become quite a complex ecosystem of pieces that make up this total cost of ownership model. These are often multiple organisations, and I'll go through that in some more detail, that the schools have relationships with, separate GDPR agreements with, all takes time, all costs money. Sometimes these are accredited support units, sometimes they're third parties. Part of our strategy is to work with support teams. I've talked to some of you, I know. We're not in the business of growing a 6,000 seat support centre. We have really good support team. They generally do a great job. We're not in the business of growing that. What we want to do is build relationships with local authority support teams, existing support organisations, to allow you to continue to support schools who on the whole are saying, we've had a great relationship with these teams for 20 years. We want to continue to have those relationships. Down the bottom here is the on-site servers. Some people have a hosted virtual desktop version of a MIS. It all costs money. It all takes time. Quite often, people don't really know what that costs them. Sometimes I ask schools what they're paying for this, and they don't know that. I think when Jim Gardner, where's Jim gone? Is he here? No, of Oasis started looking across 53 schools in Oasis at what they were spending on these bolt-ons. They kind of thought, my goodness, there's a lot of money going out that we could maybe save. What we're also seeing is people tell us the cost of their MIS is often just this bit. And I'll show you some examples of that. So you'll start a dialogue with the school and say, how much does your MIS cost you at the moment? And they'll come to you and say an amount which, when you actually dig down, it's this bit. Because that's a bit that they recognise that they're paying for the MIS. And then we have these conversations and we build up this total cost with people, and they kind of begin to understand that their actual cost is much higher than they thought it actually was. There's some things in here which are, I think, important. I'm not going to go through them all. The thing that I think is quite interesting is the architecture of the software and the data architecture is unique in Bromcom. We don't take a core piece of software and add functionality on by bolting extra pieces on. We have a central student record and a central staff record. We add data items to that and surface it through a web browser. So adding features and functions is a relatively simple thing for us to do. We don't have to go off and build a whole module. We add data items to the student and staff record, which sits in an SQL database. We have a query layer that queries it, and it pushes it out through an HTML5 wrapper into the browser. So we actually do add functions very quickly in response to customers asking us. And we go, how do you do it? It can take years. It's because of the architecture of the data, which allows us to keep ourselves moving very lean and very quickly. And that's the brainchild and genius of our MD, Ali at the back, who 10 years ago, 15 years ago said, let's go cloud. And everybody said, you're mad. Well, he wasn't as mad as people thought he was. And that gives us a real advantage. And talk to some customers about how quickly we can add features and functions when people talk to us. Moving forward, this is kind of the core functionality of an MIS. You know, I'm not going to read it because everybody can read, but pretty much these are the things that for many years have been at the core. When we talk of an MIS in Bromcom, we actually don't think of that because our definition of an MIS is this. Because we have these pieces built in. So it's kind of like one of these wonderful things, isn't it, where you're both saying the same word, but actually mean two different things by the same word. A management information system to us is supporting the school to talk to its parents without having to go and buy something separate and bolt it on. Manage the relationship, manage all the complexities. Every time the core gets updated, does it all talk to each other? I used to be the IT director for a large group of independent schools. and for a large multi-academy trust. And you know, these are the things that kept me awake at night, trying to aggregate stuff together. It all disappears because we had this view. And what we've done over time is added this functionality because our schools have asked us. We didn't wake up one morning and think, oh, let's build this. We have a constant feedback loop. And because of our data architecture, we can then deliver these functions. At the bottom is this cloud thing. So we update each time the census comes along. Click of a button, all our schools are updated. They don't have to do anything to workstations. No hassle. Absolutely done. We do have some customers that have it sitting on their private cloud. Click of a button, we update those as well. So we can reduce that. We actually think this is only 20% of what schools are typically spending on their MIS as we would define it. And this is where we start to think about cost savings. These are real numbers that somebody gave me, and they told me their MIS cost them this. That's what they told me. Because that's what they recognised as their long-standing 20-year MIS. When we started unstitching where everything else came from, we came to a number which was much bigger. Haven't made those numbers up. There's genuine numbers that we've looked at. We put our Bromcom next to it, and we kind of ended up in that barrier of that area of, sorry, £12,000 savings. We had a saving in the first year, even though you had to onboard and train people. Actual numbers, and I've got some more in a minute, which I'll share with you. We talk about a one-stop shop. What we mean is putting all the things that a modern school would expect from their management information system into one place. Keeps life simple, keeps life easy. We did this diagram, we love it, so we keep using it. This is our sort of philosophy. Those are the pieces. Martin mentioned we've added finance. Fully integrated. If you use FMS, you'll love it. Simple, easy. Staff information is all in here, all flows, all talks to each other. Easy to use. Don't have to train people on a separate product. Same browser interface, same way of data integrating. Stick it on the cloud. Apps, teacher app, parent app, student app coming. Some people say, what, children with an app on the phone? Oh, dreadful. We're actually getting quite a pull from some schools to say, particularly our Year 11 students, to tell them of room changes, to tell them of exam changes. We want to stick an app, tell them about messages, whatever. So, you know, we're going to launch that in September. I'm sure some people won't let the children near it. Other people, I'm sure, will love it. When I speak to local authorities, I wanted to kind of try and tease through how we understood that ecosystem worked. So I had a dot, and I said, let's expand that out, because somewhere along the line there's an MIS support team. Now, it's either part of the local authority or was part of the local authority, is a traded service, isn't a traded. So there's lots of models in there, but as we talk to schools, they say we'll be supported by these people for 20 odd years. We want to carry on. And we go, yeah, that's fine, we get that, and we don't want to grow a 6,000 seat support centre, because that's not our business. Our business is making this exciting software that allows people to do exciting stuff. So we put the school into that, and created this kind of, we call it a symbiotic ecosystem. That's good, isn't it? I've been working on those. It's all interconnected, isn't it? It's grown up over 20, 25 years. And in the middle, somewhere this cost is there. Some of it's seen by people up here, some of it's seen by people up here. Schools probably see it all, but maybe haven't quite done all the calculations. And typically, the software maintenance might be coming from there. They're bolt-ons. I've been through this before. 20%, about 80%. Here's all these pieces. This bit is sometimes just that bit. These are your bolt-ons. That bit, Just that bit. So getting that picture, one of the things we're trying to do as we have dialogue with people is to say, does that make sense? And if it does make sense, can we unstitch that and can we work together? Can we create an environment where these support teams continue delivering the support to the schools? And can Bromcom create an environment where maybe there's some aggregated procurement going on here that will allow schools to see cost savings if 20, 30, 40, 50 of them want to switch MIS? If you're a support team, you have an MIS support team, are outsourced, are part of a traded service, what we did is we sat down and we said, how do we keep revenue streams flowing? Because we recognise that support teams have revenue streams from all of these places. So some local authorities offer a hosted service, etc., etc. So we built some models, built 4 partner models. We said that if Bromcom sells to a school, we do it all. Thank you very much. Got some local authority support teams where the schools are going to become academies. They've looked at Bromcom and they've said, we'd like to move to Bromcom. But we'd also like to stay with the support team. And we're having dialogue there to say, well, how can we all work together in that environment? Simplest model is somebody becomes a support partner, first, second line support. We train, help you, sit alongside you. The school still calls you as they've called the support team for 20, 25 years. The only difference is it's with the Bromcom MIS. Bromcom does absolutely everything else. Second model, deploy, train, support. My colleague Liz will talk about deployment later. We have a fully automated deployment portal. Digital deployment portal, is that right?
Self-service deployment portal.
See, I knew it. Self-service. What we've done is we've spent a lot of time and money over the last 10 years working on a tool that will take data from one MIS and migrate it into the Bromcom MIS very quickly and very efficiently. So efficiently that we actually do 2 migrations where we move a school across. A test migration, I'm taking your thunder, aren't I? A test migration and then a live migration. Because we can do it quickly, we can test to make sure everything behaves itself. If things haven't behaved themselves, we tweak it so that when we do the live migration, the data's there. And often we train people then on their test data. Bromcom does the rest. Model 3, some traded services, some organisations can resell. They could be the face of everything to the schools. And this isn't just a reseller margin per se. We recognise that there are models that exist where there are percentages that the organisations get back for supporting software from certain other organisations. We build all those models in. We'll talk to you about those models. Bromcom does the rest. The last model, I'll put a dotted line because this would be for larger groups of schools. If people have an Azure infrastructure of their own, or their own Azure tenant as a local authority, and your schools have a hosted service already, you could become a hosting partner, i.e. we put our software onto your Azure instance or to your data center and manage it with you, and you could still talk to the schools, that service. Bromcom always does third line support, so that's what you would expect. So we go all the way from just that first line support all the way down to doing absolutely everything apart from third line support. I think Martin mentioned it. All our software is written in the UK, offices in Bromley. Our support team sit here, pretend to be the support team. Hello, how can I help you? And our software developers sit here, pretend to sit in code. It means that if we get a request for a new feature or we get an issue, it literally has to travel across the room and it gets into the development team and it gets sorted. You've got the head of help desk sitting here at a desk looking that way. You've got the head of deployment, which is Liz, sitting this way, and the head of software sits here, physically in the same place, working together. So when people say, you can't develop so quickly, we can, because that's how it works. It's that quick. And if we take more than about 20 minutes to respond, Ali will be on our back saying, why haven't we responded yet? So it's a driven focused on schools, focused on need, focused on giving people what they want in the time frame that they want it. We talked about, somebody mentioned G-Cloud, was that you again, Martin? We've been on G-Cloud since it started, and we believe in it. We think it's a good, easy, efficient way of procuring. We're going to be on G-Cloud 11, which comes out 2nd of July, and there is going to be aggregated procurement for local authorities, providing large discounts if lots of schools want to move across. The problem we're having at the moment is schools are coming to us and saying, I want to move to Bromcom. Cool, that's fine. Oh, and there's 30 of us. And we go, that's fine, we'll charge you the one school price 30 times. Because there's no... And people say, well, we can't procure on behalf of schools. And we say, well, that's not the point. The point is, if you've got 30 schools that want to make the shift, could you procure on their behalf because they're asking you to? Well, through G-Cloud you could. And then we can pass those savings on to schools. You know, from us as a reseller, 30, 40 visits, as opposed to one relationship, that's how you keep those costs down. So this is an example of how we're trying to work within the existing ecosystem that's sitting out there to give the schools the very best possible service they can with the people they know and trust who've been looking after them for 20 years without Bromcom having to grow a 6,000 seat support, not 6,000, but whatever it might be, support centre, and making sure that the revenue streams that support centres see there. And with the Bromcom MIS, if you can remove some of the bolt-ons, you can save schools a lot of money, but it doesn't impact on any of the other revenue streams and the other things. It's just saving their money off of those bolt-ons. This was another example that somebody did for me. This was an 8-school MAT that was trying to become academies and move out. And they took me through the pricing. And they said, this is their current costs. This is what we're there. And then I put the Bromcom costs in there. And you can see the savings. Real money, real example, not making it up. Had another one that went like this. What's the cost for your MIS? £10,883. Really? That's that bit, isn't it? Oh, yes. What about like for like? I did texting, I don't know why. I think I must have been texting somebody. Well, we use CPOM, SULCOMs, full cost. Real cost, £33,000. This is the dialogue we're trying to have with organisations to say, really, it isn't that. It really is that. Because this is what you told me. And we can do it for 25. That's without aggregate procurement across a local authority, 20, 30, 40, 50 schools, which is seeing them a saving of just under 9,000. And these are the kind of dialogues we're having, not because we want to sort of catch people out, but it's been so ingrained that this is what the MIS costs that we don't think people quite look at that entire model all of the time. Some people do, which is great. Test on this in 5 minutes. No, I pulled this out of a paper that was written by a lady called Vanessa Pittard, used to work for the DFE, and she did a total cost of ownership across organisations, speaking to some colleagues in here. Where's Asif? I'm seeing, there you are, yes. So Asif knows all about this. And you can read it all. It's in a white paper. I pulled this out. This is primary schools, actually. 12 schools, save £700,000 a year. Those are conservative, by the way. Just started with that one. No, please, Asif, please, no, do say. Thank you. We think, by not doing any smoke and mirrors, that these are real money savings that you can bring to your schools. The MIS, as we define it, has got things built in that you have to add on. Therefore, the schools are getting as good, if not a better deal. I would say a better deal, but hey, you know. And they're saving real money. Can't see a downside. because that's what we think an MIS in the 21st century should be. It shouldn't be just the core with bits bolted on the edge. It should be something that allows you to talk between the school and the parents, to share data, and you'll see from my colleagues later when they do a demo of a quick overview of the MIS, the sorts of things that people are sharing. And we think, by looking at aggregated procurements, there's savings in year. So if you can take away a third-party bolt-on, that's a contract that a school can stop and save hard cash, 10,000 deficit, take £5,000 off that, that's £5,000 of that deficit gone. And in these times, we think that's something that people should look at. And then these, what I call structural savings and cost avoidance. I'm an IT person, I worked for IBM for many years, big multi-year deals at country level. Savings and avoidance. I don't have to keep buying servers, I don't have to keep doing this. That takes 3 to 5 years to play out sometimes. I've just bought myself a new server. I'm not going to see that saving for another 3 years. That's what we talk about, I call structural and cost avoidance. And in the structural stuff, there's about how staff can be freed up to do other things as well. We heard this morning from some large multi-academy trust customers where people's jobs roles start to change. They have more time to do other things focused at students and helping staff because they haven't got to spend time doing some of this costly stuff that a legacy MIS might make them have to do. We don't underestimate the change piece. And Elizabeth's going to talk about that later in more detail. But we don't underestimate it because moving a group of schools from one MIS to another is a challenge. It's a big project and we know how to do it. We did 100 schools in 4 months and Oasis people stood up and said, yeah, we would do things differently, but the data was moved and people were happy. We don't think anybody else has done this. We think we're the only company that can do it at the scale and the pace and the accuracy that we can do it. And we have an open invitation to anybody in the room. If you have a school with a legacy MIS that's complicated and has been used for 20 years, without any obligation whatsoever, we will take their data and put it into Bromcom for you in less than 5 working days and show it to you. Make that pledge to you now. If anybody wants to do that, come and talk to us. We did it for the Harris Federation. We did it for other schools where they thought it was impossible to move their data, and we showed them. In fact, for the Harris Federation, I think it was a Friday they gave us the data, Ali, wasn't it? And on the Monday, we went back and gave them the demonstration on their data. I used to be the IT director for the Harris Federation, and the reason I work for Bromcom now is I just couldn't believe how they moved the data from the most complex data set I'd ever seen in my career from one MIS to the other. And I got intrigued into that and ended up meeting Ali, and the rest is history. So if anybody's sitting here thinking, please, without any obligation whatsoever, we will do that for you. We just, you upload a backup to our secure site. We have a GDPR thing that says you're going to let us have the data for X amount of time. And we're happy for anybody to look at that migrated data and have a deep dive session with our team on it. If we are a local authority that's working with Capital One or other things, we talk to all of that as well. I'm extremely sensitive to the way data is used across organisations, and we're extremely sensitive to make sure that that data can still flow into the various teams, school improvement teams, child protection teams, and we don't ignore that as part of a project. We don't come and say, here's your software, guess your data, goodbye. We don't do that. We sit alongside you as part of a complex project managed program. Whoops. I kind of like turn those green because I wanted to say, yeah, we do all these things. I kind of said these things, but we mean them. They're true. We will sit and show you if you think any of that is not. Speak to organisations that we've talked to. Where we have schools looking at our MIS that haven't looked at other MISs for a long time, apart from normally SIMS, they do tend to go, gosh, that's a lot of functionality. That's quite exciting. That's fun. That does things in ways I never thought was possible. So these things are all part of our plan, and Liz will talk a little bit more in detail about that during her session. We're happy to do any of these things. I genuinely mean that. No obligation whatsoever. If you want to say to us, come and look at a few schools and take us through your TCO model, I've got an interactive spreadsheet where you can put the numbers in and they pop out the bottom. Happy to do that with you, help you understand that. How does that extrapolate across the whole local authority school set? I've talked about this, sample migrations. Choose your ugliest, complex school. We will migrate it. Train people. We have dedicated programs to train support teams to get them up to date. And we think all of that will help with this efficiencies, values, etc. What we're trying to do, and I hope succeeding in the marketplace, is these things, make things easier. Easier to procure. Yeah, come out for a normal procurement, that's fine. G-Cloud is quite an interesting way of doing it. Got Bob Bartlett somewhere hovering around the back, who is our contracts and procurement expert, can talk you through all of that. None of this Solus update, none of this workstation update. We just do it in the cloud for you at 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday normally, and by 11 o'clock it's done. Well, it actually takes less time than that, but by the time they've tested it, schools don't notice that it happens. We release updates constantly, and we're on a roadmap. We're agile, not only agile because I'm walking around, but agile in our software development. We keep adding features and functions, and it's just based on feedback. These guys in the sales team come back from customers and they said they would like this, we add it in. We release minimum viable products and build the functionality through over a relatively short period of time. Where we've done procurements, as Martin said, larger aggregated procurements, mostly for multi-academy trusts, Bromcom wins. It's fact. Some very high quality, outstanding schools have chosen Bromcom. And we heard this morning from Karen English and the Harris Federation. Used to work with her. I know what she's like. She's a very demanding lady, trust me. And she was talking about how easy it is to get hold of data, how quick. She can look across all her 27 secondary schools, because she looks after secondary, bring their data down centrally within an hour and start asking questions of what support does that school need, how can I help them if I spot an issue, if Ofsted are coming in, how can I help them to be ready for that. I tacked a couple of things on the end. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I kind of went through some sort of reasons why people don't move. And one of the things was, well, it's this much and it will become this much. Actually, what that was talking to was about this. This bit became £4 to be £10, not the rest of it. So again, it's just a case of, are we looking at the total cost of ownership? The other one, which my own personal passion in all of this, is this one here that says the software doesn't improve schools, but because people know how to use it, you can get to the data. My background is as an educator. This is a chart that looks at school effectiveness. Way back in 1992, Ofsted performed. One of the first things they did is commissioned research by the University of London on what made effective schools. And they looked at 11 schools across the world to see if they could find things that were the same. And they came up with 11. 11 characteristics, I can't ever say the word, 11 characteristics of effective schools. And it's well out there now. It's been there so if you go through these things, these are all things that if you go to a good school now, they're doing them, aren't they? There's nothing on here that's changed. Emphasis on teaching and learning, yay. High expectations, yay. Monitoring and inquiry, they're all the things that you recognise. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is what makes effective schools. And actually, if you look at Ofsted over the years, that's what's underpinning them. Even now, all these years on, they're looking at these things in slightly different ways. And I just went through and went, you know what? A well-focused management information system is delivering the data for senior leaders and for school development professionals in a highly effective way. The single thing I love about Bromcom out of anything else that I see is you can set up a report and get it run and emailed to you every day at 3 o'clock. You know, it's automated, it's great. So senior leaders can have in their email box at 3 o'clock every day information about certain groups of students. And they can be dynamic groups, so you can set up a attendance group, and Jason will talk about that later. So you can get dynamic, up-to-date data. Our Map Vision, our LA Vision, our aggregated data view can give senior leaders that snapshot of data, and they can drill, and they can find the students, and they can find the places where interventions are needed, where support is required. So if anybody wants to talk to us about school improvement and about how data drives school improvement, we know it does, and how through Bromcom you can make that more efficient and more effective for senior leaders. We'd love to have that conversation. What's it got to do with procuring an MIS? Well, I don't know. For me, it's got everything, because I'm about teaching and learning and outcomes. But it's something that often gets neglected when we talk about that journey.